Two stories this week that on the surface look completely unrelated. One is about the most dominant driver of the modern Formula One era and a conversation happening at the highest levels of the sport about whether the team that employs him should voluntarily bench him. The other is about a race weekend that was already controversial before a single car turned a wheel, and that descended into the kind of team order chaos Formula One has not seen since drivers were openly defying their engineers on live radio in front of a global audience. Put them in the same frame, and something interesting happens, because both stories are really about the same thing: control. Who has it, who exercises it, and what happens when the people supposed to be managing this sport lose their grip on it in public. Today, we are breaking down the Red Bull and Verstappen ban conversation in full. What is being urged, who is urging it, and why Red Bull's response tells you everything about how that organization thinks. And then we are going inside the boycotted race that became something nobody planned for, the team order drama that turned a controversial weekend into a genuinely chaotic one. Subscribe to F1 Race Report right now. Let us start with the Verstappen situation, because the phrase "urged to consider a ban" is doing a lot of work here, and it's important to understand exactly what is being urged, by whom, and on what basis. The argument, and it is being made by people with genuine standing in this sport, goes like this. Verstappen is sitting on 10 super license penalty points, 2 away from the automatic FIA ban the rules mandate. The case being made is that Red Bull should not wait for the FIA to trigger that ban through another on-track incident. They should impose it themselves. Voluntarily withdraw Verstappen from a race weekend, absorb the competitive cost on their own terms, and demonstrate that they take the spirit of the penalty point system seriously, rather than managing the threshold like a number to be avoided. The people making this argument are not naive about the cost. Missing a race is a significant strategic disadvantage, but their point is precisely that the cost is what gives the gesture its meaning. A voluntary ban that costs Red Bull nothing is not a statement. A voluntary ban that costs them points and championship position is the only version that actually changes the conversation about whether the penalty system means what it says. The deeper argument is about the integrity of the super license system itself. If the message the sport sends is that a driver important enough to a top team's commercial interests can accumulate 10 points without consequence and navigate the threshold carefully enough to never cross it, then the system is not a deterrent. It's a PR exercise with a number attached, and the drivers lower down the grid with fewer resources and less commercial protection feel that asymmetry very clearly. Red Bull's response has been exactly what you would expect from an organization that has never responded well to external pressure on internal decisions. Silence combined with carefully placed suggestions that the conversation is being driven by competitive interests rather than genuine governance concern, which may be partially true, but partial truth is not a full answer. And the full answer, whether Red Bull believes the voluntary ban argument has merit on its own terms, has not been given. Now, the boycotted race. Transition tone, because this story has layers, and the top layer, the boycott itself, is almost less interesting than what happened once the race ran. The boycott context first. The race had been controversial in the weeks leading up to it for reasons combining sporting, political, and commercial concerns in the way Formula One controversies sometimes do when the sport operates at the edge of where it should and should not be racing. Several parties raised objections. Some drivers spoke cautiously about reservations. A small number went further. The word boycott entered the conversation, and once it entered, it was impossible to remove, irregardless of whether the race went ahead. It went ahead, and then the team order drama started. Two drivers at the same team found themselves in a position their team had not fully planned for strategically. The faster driver on the day was running behind the slower driver, slower on that specific race day, because of the safety car deployment, the pit stop sequence, and the way the 2026 power unit regulations were affecting tire behavior in conditions none of the teams had encountered in quite that combination before. The team issued an order. The driver at the front did not comply, not immediately, not with the clean acknowledgement that makes team order situations manageable from the outside. There was a radio conversation that went on long enough and heated enough that the broadcast picked it up and the audience heard exactly how uncomfortable the internal dynamic was. This is where the story gets genuinely interesting. The team order drama wasn't just a driver-engineer disagreement. It was a window into something the 2026 regulations have been exposing across multiple teams this season. The new power unit dynamics mean the relationship between strategic position and actual race pace is far less predictable under the previous rules. A driver appearing slower on a given lap may simply be in a different energy deployment phase that will equalize within 3 or 4 laps without any instruction. The gap that looks like a pace difference is sometimes a deployment timing difference. The driver who refused to move did so because they genuinely believed, and the data on their steering wheel suggested, that the pace difference was temporary and that the instruction was based on information that would look different in 10 laps' time. They were not wrong about that. They were also not managing the internal politics of the situation care these moments require. Both things can be true simultaneously. What the team did next is what the paddock has been discussing ever since. Rather than resolving the situation with a clear and final instruction, they left the conversation open long enough for the strategic situation to change, which it did. The original instruction became irrelevant. The team order had been effectively overridden, not by direct defiance, but by managing the radio exchange until time became the deciding factor. That's sophisticated in-race politics. It's also exactly the kind of thing that creates internal tension taking weeks to fully resolve. Step back from both stories and the connection is clear. Formula One in 2026 is a sport where the traditional mechanisms of control, the penalty system, the team hierarchy, the governance structures keeping competitive behavior within defined limits, are being tested in real time by regulatory change, commercial pressure, and the specific personalities involved. The Verstappen ban conversation tests whether the super license system means the same thing for every driver on the grid, or whether it has a tiered application based on who the driver is and who employs them. The team order drama tests whether authority structures inside a Formula One team can survive the specific conditions the 2026 regulations create when strategic situations develop faster than instructions can be properly communicated. Neither test has a clean answer. Both are going to Miami unresolved, and a sprint weekend, compressed format, accelerated strategic decisions, reduced margin for careful management is not the ideal environment for unresolved questions about control and authority to find answers. But that's exactly where Formula One is right now. And that's precisely why this is the most compelling and complicated period this sport has navigated in years. Drop your take in the comments. Should Red Bull voluntarily bench Verstappen before the FIA forces the issue? And did the driver who refused the team order make the right call given what the data was telling them? Subscribe to F1 Race Report for this conversation every single week. Like the video, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you at Miami.